Hello friends and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Jamie and this week we are going to whip up some mouth-watering meals that are simple, that use up ingredients that we have on hand and some fresh produce from the garden. So if you are ready, let's dive into the magic of from scratch dinners together. So for meal number one, this is an absolute favorite in our household. I've shared this before, but I haven't shared the actual recipe. So this time you can use any type of pork or chicken, but we do mainly use pork for this recipe because otherwise pork can be quite bland, and this is a winner every single time. So here I have a kilo of diced pork or 2 pounds, and for the marinade I'll add 1 teaspoon of sea salt. I tend to go near 2 teaspoons garlic powder, quarter cup of xoxo wine, which is Chinese wine, a quarter cup of sesame oil, and 2 teaspoons of white pepper. And then I go ahead and make the sauce, and I do half a cup of water, half a cup of honey, a quarter cup of soy sauce, and again a quarter cup of xoxo wine. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And then about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice and a few tablespoons, just shy of a quarter cup for this amount, of sesame oil for that flavor, black pepper, and a few little dashes of white pepper. I do prefer to serve this with sugar snap peas, so we make sure we nearly always have them on hand. Like I said, it's such a favorite, but I chopped up a couple of garlic cloves, and then we only had a few stalks of spring onions, but I do want to reserve some for later on, just a sprinkle on top. So they're raw, but I will use about half to actually put into the marinade when it cooks. And this is a sticky pork. I don't think I said that, but this is like a Chinese sticky pork. So once that has marinated, you can leave it overnight if you want, but here I actually cook it quickly and we cannot tell that much of a difference in flavor at all. So it's great to do this as a fast meal. It's so simple once you've got it down. So here I tend to add to this amount about a quarter or so, up to half a cup of flour, and the same in corn flour, and I just basically keep adding it until it feels almost a little bit squeaky, so all the liquid or all the moisture from the pork has been absorbed. And I keep this little pot on the stove with oil, and I do recook them in these a couple of times because we make it so often. That oil is mainly just a lighter olive oil mixed with sesame oil, because sesame oil can be quite expensive, and like I said, I do reuse it. You can see me pour it back in. I find the cast iron cooks this so beautifully. Then I just fry it in batches. This amount was 5 batches in my large cast iron. Once it's all been fried up, I added the marinade with some garlic, a little bit of spring onions, all of the pork back in, and then let that cook to heat up. And once that's almost done, I put the sugar snap peas into the same pan, and I would have prepared the rice already, so it all finishes and it's nicely hot at the same time. And like I said, I sprinkle it with spring onions and sesame seeds, and this is actually such a lovely meal as leftovers too, but it is a winner at home every single time. So I mentioned we have so many ingredients that we do need to be using up. It's the end of summer in our garden, but we did do a meat haul at the butcher's a couple of weeks ago, so I am just sorting out what we have left, and a lot of it is beef based. So I expected this to be a kind of beef only from scratch meals, but I did want to include this pork recipe in the beginning. And here I am just weighing out and preparing our diced beef, our stewing beef. I specifically get this for casseroles, and I got about just over 2 kilos, I think 2.4 kilos, and I've just divided that into 3, and I'm freezing what we're not using today. And like I said, it's for a casserole, so I'm kind of making an end of summer casserole, and I like to use this on a weekly or bi-weekly basis in my slow cooker to use up especially any ingredients that need using up or that are kind of starting to not go off but just have seen better days, and you'll see that throughout this video. But I did just pop the amount we needed into this bowl, which again I think I'm using about near 800 grams here, and I just sprinkled it with some pepper, some salt and paprika, and I chopped up some garlic. We have just a few tiny heads of onions left that are left in the ground from summer, because I just didn't think they'd store all that well, and they were really small anyway. I also grabbed some rosemary and some thyme, and this is my favorite view right now. I didn't think we could grow flowers, but we did, and I love it. We definitely need to make a priority for flowers in our next season garden. If anybody else just loves them, please let me know. I want to do a lot of cut flowers, but I haven't actually cut any. I did give the chickens some water. I like to say hello to them and give them some weeds around. And here I am just washing these few heads. I kind of wanted one big one, but I did decide to use 3 small ones instead. And I'm going to fry up the garlic and the onion in a separate pot on the stove first. Now, the truth is that most of the ingredients that I use, I don't measure. I never really measure when I do anything in the slow cooker, especially a casserole. A 1/4 cup of flour to my stewing beef, and I'm going to fry that up too in butter with the garlic and the onion just to seal the meat. I don't mind having the garlic and the onion in there already. It's just for time saving really. So back out in the garden, and I'm picking some of our runner beans, and these are getting kind of hard and stringy. They're not great when you let them go that far, but the beans inside the pods, which these are the Scarlet Emperor beans that produce beautiful red flowers. The beans are so nice. I'm going to show you them in a little bit. I also grabbed a few odd potatoes that is from a kind that produced a lot smaller potatoes than some of the other ones we did put into the ground this year. And I'm grabbing some tomatoes that just need using up. I kind of look around and see what needs using in our garden that I'm not going to be preserving, and that's what I will be putting in my casserole. And I do the same with any ingredients from my fridge. So I'm adding a tablespoon of oil and a bit more butter to my slow cooker, and then I'm putting in the finished meat and onion and garlic mixture. And then I just want to wash and prepare any vegetables that are going to be going into the slow cooker. So I got near 1 kilo or so of potatoes, but with my rule of what goes into the slow cooker, there are the beautiful beans by the way, is anything goes. Anything that kind of is nice in a stew, it can go in. Anything that needs using up, it can go in. And I try to have as big of a variety as possible. I find that often they come out tasting quite similar regardless of what you put in. But my goal is to have the amount of meat that I want us to have. This will be at least 2 evenings worth of food, maybe a lunch. And the amount of meat that I want to use is always the only thing taken into account for. I'm also chopping up some of our courgettes that are more like marrows, and some parsnips that need using up, a little bit of carrots, and I always add Worcester sauce, about I would say 2 tablespoons worth. Same with a tablespoon or so of balsamic vinegar, salt, pepper, stock, a fresh rosemary and thyme, and some bay leaves. I honestly want to call it my end of week meal or my beginning of week meal. Really, I make it on Sundays for like Monday, Tuesday, so we don't have to start off the week rushing and cooking, and I can kind of clean out my fridge or my garden of produce and get things kind of reset. Anything that needs to go goes in the slow cooker. So this was my kind of end of summer version, and this is way later on. I've got changed, I've showered, and I'm ready to relax with this food, and the meat just falls apart. I do make chicken in here sometimes, but I love to use this stewing beef. It's so hearty now. We have some colder days, even though there was sunshine this particular day, and these colder days, this type of food is going to really kind of flourish and keep us going. So now I'm going to make some homemade burgers. Now these are really easy. I'm just chopping up some onions and some garlic, and I'm putting it in with a mince. Again, the Worcester sauce just gives it that little bit of extra flavor. Salt, pepper, and a few dashes of paprika. I just really go in and work this with my hands. I add 2 eggs. This is about 1 kilo of mince. And a big tip when you make your own burgers, if you don't want them falling apart, a lot of people do use breadcrumbs, but you don't really need it here. If you use onions like I do, you chop them as finely as you can. I mean super fine, and they will stay together, I promise. So we like beefy burgers. Of course burgers will kind of shrink. If you make a dent in the middle, it will stop them from sort of going to expanding too much upwards. However, I kind of like that, and I don't mind that they're getting smaller around the side. When you bite through it, it feels like enough, if that makes sense. So with this we are going to do a potato hash. I really wanted to do some fries, but I decided to save it for tomorrow. So we had some sweet potatoes that needed using up. I only used 1 or 2 and saved the rest for dinner tomorrow, and I mixed in some white potatoes from the garden instead, and it probably was about 1.5 kilos, maybe slightly more here. Again, I don't measure, it's just what we need to eat as a family. Some courgettes and some onions and celery. A potato hash like this, again like the casserole, is perfect for using up a mix of vegetables. So I'm getting some cucumber here that we have. They're still coming, which is amazing. We did plant them really late. I didn't think they'd do anything, but I think this is bush champion, and I definitely need to put that into the books for next summer. So I'm adding some butter to the potatoes once they started going a little bit crispy. Again, some more paprika and dried Italian seasoning, salt, pepper, and the vegetables back in to cook while I put the burgers in. So I've left the burgers in the fridge, and once it's ready I just brush them with a little bit of coconut oil and grill them under the grill until they are nice and brown, and then I turn them. So these are really kind of meaty ones. They're not massive, but it's too hard for the kids to hold the massive ones anyway. And this is how it works. The cheese slices look ridiculous, but this is like a sloppy burger. I added some burger sauce, but it tastes so good, you guys. Like, it might look ridiculous, but this is a good burger, and the potato hash is nice and warming, and it's not heavy, and it makes a really good twist for a nice family meal. And speaking of nice family meal, we got the last of our sweet potatoes to use up, and I'm going to make some crispy fries. This is the key here. You need to cut them up as evenly as possible. That's step number one. And number two, you need to soak them. Now you can do this for several hours, but I usually don't have the time, or I don't think that far ahead. So I just rinse them several times until the water goes clear. This is to get rid of any excess starches. And then I pat them dry. So they need to be dry to get rid of any extra moisture. And that's the next step in making them crispy. Just do a drizzle of olive oil, not too much, and then whatever seasoning you want. I like to do paprika, pepper, and some dried Italian herbs. And then I'll get the steaks ready. I'll salt and pepper them on both sides, and then I will rub them with oil. Now I use corn flour here as well, so I use about 2 tablespoons of corn flour before I put them into the oven and toss them together. This will help to just give them that crispy edge. And I rub the steaks with just a teaspoon or so of oil, and they go into my dry cast iron pans. I don't oil the pan first, I oil the steaks. But the big thing here with the fries is that you don't want to salt them. You will salt them at the end after they've cooled. Trust me, salt can kind of draw moisture as well, so try not to mess too much with that, but any other seasoning is fabulous. So I just chopped up some mushrooms. Like you see, they didn't look great, they needed using up, so we can turn that into a sauce. Cook them in butter, then add 2 tablespoons or so of flour, and then some milk to the amount of sauce that we want. The steaks only take a couple of minutes on either side, and then I'll leave them to rest in loosely packed foil. So as the sauce starts to slowly heat back up, I will make sure to stir it, and then I'm going to just add my sugar snap peas back into the pan. Okay, you might have seen that coming, but they need using up also. Again, you can see a similar trend of ingredients that I actually buy. I always have corn flour hand. I try to have sugar snap peas on hand because they just add that extra little crunch. Apart from all our other vegetable gardens, like celery and sugar snap peas are things that I tend to actually buy and not grow. So once it's about halfway through the cooking time, so 12 minutes or so in, I will turn the fries carefully. So these are on 180 degrees. And turn every single one. Take your time and make sure the pan is not crowded. Yes, I can fit like all of these in one pan, but if the fries touch each other too much, again, it creates steam and moisture. So you are better off with about a kilo and a half like this to split it between 2 pans. Turn them all, then put them back in for another 10-12 minutes or so. So to serve this, I'm going to make some mayo, and this is avocado mayo. I'm using avocado oil, it's more neutral. And when you make mayo, I love using this hand blender. It works wonders, but you have to drizzle in your oil so slowly and in batches. So here I will put in 2 eggs, about a teaspoon of salt, up to a tablespoon of mustard. It completely depends on your taste. A tablespoon of lemon juice, at all, and then slowly whisk that on high so that it froths and becomes nice and yellow. And then once that's all mixed on high, continue mixing and slowly adding in your oil in a drizzle until it starts to thicken up. So once your fries are out, you need to let them cool for at least 5 minutes, and then you sprinkle them with salt like I did in this little cup. And then I'm just finishing off the sauce by adding some soy sauce in until I like the color, really. And that is all I do. My peas are ready, the steaks are ready, and I've got my homemade mayo. Now it's green because we had really yellow eggs, and then I used obviously avocado oil. just adds a little bit of fun to see what shade it will turn out. But I hope you enjoy this week of ideas, easy, simple, from scratch dinners. Let me know if you want to see any more. I have a week of breakfasts coming up too from scratch, and until then I see you and I bless you.